Hi guys, hope you're all having a great week. This week we're going to be talking about how to manage training around obviously leading a busy life. Okay, so obviously that can include all sorts of things, you know, kids, work, all that kind of stuff, which obviously you want to balance alongside your training and still be able to enjoy both. Okay, you don't necessarily want it to be all of one or the other. Okay, so when life is busy, all right, it's easy to let things take over and you might feel like your training gets neglected. You might feel like your training time's really squeezed. You might not enjoy your sessions as much. You might not feel like you're making as much progress, okay, which obviously can be a little bit demotivating and doesn't necessarily make it easy mentally to keep going. So when it comes to managing your training around a busy lifestyle, okay, there's 3 things you can do to just make things seem a little bit more manageable, okay? So obviously the first thing is just narrowing your focus a little bit, all right? Obviously within CrossFit, there's a lot of things that we want to work on, okay? And it's easy to want to work on those things all the time, okay? And obviously the more time you've got, the more things that you can commit to working on through the week, all right? But obviously when time is tight, what can happen is if you end up still trying to focus on everything, the quality of the time that you spend on each individual thing can really start to suffer, okay? Either because you're trying to squeeze a lot into a short space of time, or because you're trying to rush through things, okay? Or because you're trying to fit so many things in, you're only spending a little bit of time on each thing, and that might not be enough time to progress, okay? So when time is tight, all right, you really want to just pick 2, maybe 3 things that you're really going to focus on, okay? And make sure that when you do turn up to train, you put in as much emphasis as you can on those 2 or 3 things so the quality is really high, okay? Spend 6 to 8 weeks working on those things, all right? And then switch and start to focus more on something else, okay? Obviously that doesn't mean that you're just going to completely then switch off from those things and move completely on to something else, all right? But the majority of your time is just focused on those 2 or 3 things, okay? And that can make things seem much more manageable. You get the enjoyment back because you feel like you're making progress in something, okay? And you don't feel like you're trying to do 10 things at once, okay? The other thing that you want to think about when training time is tight, all right, is consistency, okay? Now, it's always easy to say, well, I can fit in 2 hours on this day, 3 hours on this day, a session in the morning on this day, a session in the evening on the same day, and overcommit yourself to training, okay? But generally then what happens is you've planned your week, all right? It's not really an achievable amount of time that you can commit to training, but of those things you're working on, you spread them out over those sessions, okay, as you normally would, all right? But then what happens is you might miss a session here, or you might only have time to do half a session here, and then you start to miss things which you want to be doing, okay? So you're much better off consistently saying, okay, I can train for 90 minutes a day and do that 5 days a week for 8 weeks, okay, than saying, okay, some days I can train for 2 hours, some days I can train for an hour, but then on the 2-hour days, missing the other hours because that day's been a little bit busier, all right, and not really having any continuity or consistency in what you're doing, okay, because remember, we're talking about progressing over the long term, all right, and over the long term, consistency is always the key, all right, like I say, you're better off training consistently for 90 minutes a day over a longer period of time than trying to do too much at certain periods and then not enough in other periods and having that big fluctuation in your training volume. And then obviously that's going to lead to a big fluctuation in your progress, your focus, and how much enjoyment you get out of training too. Okay, and then the final thing you want to make sure you're prioritizing when life is busy, all right, is your recovery. Okay, again, it's very easy to stack your day full of things that you need to be doing, all right, but then you end up either not eating properly or not sleeping properly, okay? And then that has a knock-on effect then on how you perform the next day, both in life and also in training, okay? So it's always really important, however busy life gets, that you're always making sure when you're trying to progress in training that you're prioritizing your recovery in terms of your sleep, your nutrition, all right? That might be things like your mobility too, because again, that's what's going to help your body recover and give you that long-term progress, okay? And you'll quickly feel, if you're neglecting those things, all right, okay, you might be making time for training, but the quality is going to be quite low because your body's very, very fatigued, okay? Don't forget, your body doesn't differentiate between different sources of stress, okay? So if you've got work stress, life stress, and training stress, all at overwhelming levels, okay, then it's likely going to mean that each of those things is going to suffer. Okay, so obviously I know it's very easy to do when time is tight. You know, the first thing you don't do is perhaps spend 15 minutes cooling down at the end of your session, or you stop thinking ahead about what you're going to eat, so you ended up just grabbing food on the go, and then you might not be eating enough, or you might be eating too much, or the quality of the food might not quite be there. All right, or it's easy to squeeze in, you know, an extra half an hour doing emails, but then that means you go to bed half an hour later than you normally would, and then you can't sleep because you've been looking at your screen, and then you might only get 5-6 hours sleep on a night. Okay, so all those little things combined can add up to have quite a big effect on how you perform in each of those individual aspects of life. Okay, so you're always better doing less with a higher quality over a consistent period of time. Okay, because like I say, in the long term, that's going to lead you to the best possible result. All right, so I hope that's helpful, guys. All right, as always, if you've got any questions, feel free to give me a shout, and have a great week.